Well, good evening, members of council, members of the media. We have our CAO here and our communications HR person, Brian, and members in the gallery. So welcome, and also Director Aaron and Linda Stevenson. Thank you for being here. The mayor will be along momentarily, and also we have a few council members finishing up work, and they will be along. But just to keep with timeline, we'll pass it over to our chair of Planning Board.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll get right into the agenda. The agenda for the June 21st meeting of Planning Board was circulated. We will call for a motion for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. All those in favor say aye. Contrary? Hearing none, motion carried. Our first thing on the agenda is 775 Water Street, official planning zoning bylaw amendment. The supporting, and I'll remain seated because I'm closer to the mic and they can hear me better on the virtual stuff. So, supporting explanation. The purpose of the official planning zoning amendment is to allow an apartment building development. The applicant is proposing apartment building development. Apartment building means a building containing more than 2 dwelling units except a row house and townhouse as defined in this bylaw. Background: an application was received from Arsenal Brothers Holding, Inc. for a portion of PID number 836353 to amend the city official plan from commercial land use to residential land use and the city's zoning bylaw from service commercial C2 zone to high density residential R4 zone. A public meeting was held on June 15, 2021, and council gave first reading on the same date. And there's a map attached indicating the portion of the property to be rezoned to R4 and the remaining in the pink, and there is remaining C2. Also, a concept plan for the proposed R4 development is included in the package. So the report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw: when planning board reviews the zoning bylaw amendment, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. Under section 8.4 of the Parks and Green Space Plan, the criteria of B, C, E, and G, and H must be considered. So A, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment: if council approves the zoning map amendment from C2 to R4, the applicant will be permitted to construct an apartment building subject to the R4 development standards as noted below. And there's a chart there that lays out the R4 zone standards. I won't bother reading it. We'll just table it for the record. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment: the rezoning conforms to the official plan, section 5.2.2, location of high-density housing. The proposed amendments have no impact on the Parks and Green Space Plan. 5.2.2, location of high-density housing. Council's intentions about locating high-density housing are important to residents concerned about potential location of row houses and apartment buildings into their predominantly low-density neighborhood. To help allay these concerns, council lays out specific policies below on where they may allow future high-density housing, some of which elaborate on their foregoing policy for special planning and development areas. Location criteria. Council's criteria for locating high-density housing in the city of Summerside include the desirability of infilling properties which are already partly developed for higher density housing, the desirability of locating high density housing close to jobs, community facilities and services, and of promoting pedestrian access, opportunities for maximizing the number of opportunities for scenic views through higher density and taller residential buildings, but with protection of adequate view planes, benefits of locating higher density housing in difficult to service areas, so that they can help distribute expensive development costs among more users. Opportunities for innovative mixes of higher density housing with other residential development and CDAs. Opportunities for recycling older non-heritage residential properties with higher density development, opportunities for apartments in residential/commercial use buildings, avoidance of negative economic and physical impact on surrounding land uses, whether existing or proposed. So in the official plan, the objective to encourage high-density housing is in specific areas. The following are councilors' statements of policy. 1, promote high-density housing on properties already partly developed for high-density housing. 2, consider applications for high-density housing in the following situations. 3, a mix of housing types in CDAs. 4, areas presently occupied by conforming mobile home parks, and council's policies relating to that, 5.5, 3, 2, and 5. 5, rezoning in areas presently designated for medium density R3 zone residential use. Areas immediately north, 6, areas immediately north of the downtown defined as Notre Dame Street to North Granville, Notre Dame Street to the north, Granville Street to the east, Heather Moyse Drive to the south, and Duke Street to the west, subject to no harmful impacts on local heritage housing and within residential and commercial buildings. 7, downtown D-zone, urban core area, all districts. 8, city arterial and collector roads as referred in section 7.1 and figure 7.1. Consider 9, consider applications for high-density housing in other areas with careful consideration of council's location criteria listed above. 7.1.1, city arterials are Water Street East, South Drive, and Water Street, and Heather Moyse Drive. C, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment, this 6.89 acres site is suitable for high-density residential land use. Existing public street network and municipal services are available on Water Street East for this development. The developer plans to allow a 4.5 meter, 5-foot buffer between the development and neighbor to the east, Eileen Heffel at 781 Water Street East. D, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, the subject property abuts 3 uses. The land use to the immediate east and west are C2, the lands to the immediate south are zoned R1, and the land to the north is agricultural. The rezoning from C2 to the proposed R4 would be compatible with the surrounding properties and would be considered a down zoning. The subject property is intended to be further subdivided and will be subject to a major subdivision process upon development. And there's a map showing the subject property. E, any comments from residents or interested persons? Staff comment, a public meeting was held on June 15, 2021. The public meeting notice was advertised in the May 29th edition of The Guardian. 20 letters were mailed to 17 property owners. David Arsenault of Arsenault Brother Holdings, Inc. provided an overview of the development and noted that the housing is needed in the community. Mrs. Eileen Heffel, 781 Water Street East, spoke at the public meeting. She had questions about the impact this development would have on her property value, the increase in traffic on Water Street East, and the mud/dust that she is experiencing now as a result of another development and will experience as a result of this development. Trevor Heffel spoke regarding his mother's property at 781 Water Street East. He asked about the distance of the development from her west property boundary line and asked if the developer would consider a fence along the common boundary line. F, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking, and parkland for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the city water supply and sewer treatment system can handle the additional loading created by the change in zoning from its current C2 designation to R4. The city's water main infrastructure for this development is a 250 millimeter distribution main on Water Street East or a 300 millimeter transmission main on Water Street East. can handle the additional water requirements for the zoning change. The city's sewer main infrastructure for this development is a 200-millimeter gravity collection main on Water Street East and can handle the additional sewer loading for the zoning change. The developer is responsible for all servicing costs due to the zoning change and land development. Water Street is a collector street, which handles 18 to 22 vehicles per day and will accept the additional loading. Water Street has an existing ditch system, which will handle the development drainage. Water Street East has 30-phase electrical service available to service the proposed development. If existing poles are required to be relocated, the developer is responsible for all associated costs. Underground service is required and engineered drawing to be submitted to Summerside Electrical for approval. Please note that pad-mounted transformers have a 6-month lead time and require a signed letter of intent before an order will be placed. There is ample existing parkland, Lafergie Park, 3.9 acres, located within 600 meters of the subject development, and the park is accessible by street walkway network. Parkland dedication is not required until the property is further subdivided. G, impacts from the development on pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, the development meets the offsets for intersection distance between Starlight Street and Ross Avenue. The single access point to this property increases the access safety with only one point of access to Water Street East versus multiple driveways for the buildings on Water Street East. There is currently no pedestrian crossing at this location. H, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, there are no compatibility issues regarding environment, scenic, or heritage resources. Impact on the city finances and budget. Staff comment, not applicable. Other matters as specified by this bylaw. Staff comment, nothing there. K, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, there is no evidence to support residential property assessment values are affected negatively as a result of a new residential development. The developer stated that he would consider constructing a fence along the common boundary of the subject property, and Mrs. Eileen Heffel, as they have satisfied fence requests in some of their developments. The issue of mud dirt is expected as a result of any development and will be addressed during the subdivision process. Staff review. City staff support the application from Arsenal Brothers Holding, Inc. to rezone from C2 to R4. As per section 5.10, subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. I should as well make reference to a letter from the developer, Arsenal Brothers Holding, Inc., that addresses some of the concerns that were raised at the public meeting. I can read that into the record if you wish. Our council have all received it. I can table it. We all received it. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read it. So we will just table it in the, I think it speaks to a number of the things that have already been spoken to in the document anyway. So we will table the letter from, that was dated, where is it dated? Yeah, signed by David Arsenal and dated this morning, I believe, today. Okay, so we'll let that table. So the planning board recommendation, we'll read that into the record and ask for a mover and seconder, and then we will open it to discussion. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Arsenal Brothers Holding, Inc. for a portion of PID number 836353 to amend the city official plan from commercial land use to residential land use and the city's zoning bylaw from service commercial C2 zone to high-density residential R4 zone be recommended to be approved by council. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. So just for the public's information, the composition of planning board is Councillor Ramsey, Councillor Adams, the mayor, and myself. We are the voting members, but we certainly welcome and encourage the participation of all council. But when the vote comes, it's planning board who votes, and then that recommendation goes to council, and all council has their opportunity to vote there. So with that, Councillor McDougall.
Yes, when you were reading through there, it said about the parkland dedication will be decided upon on the next phase or further down?
I think it said it wasn't required for this development, but I'll ask Aaron.
Can you just explain that?
So parkland dedication is done at the subdivision process.
Right.
So this is a rezoning. So we don't apply the parkland dedication at this time.
Okay, perfect. And the only other comment I have is I just want to compliment the Arsenault Properties or Brothers, whatever it is, on their application and for their follow-up with the surrounding neighborhood. I think a lot of developers could take note of this. It makes things go a whole lot easier, so thank you.
Councillor Ramsey. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Councillor. Go ahead. 6-1 half dozen.
6-1 half dozen. I just wanted to thank the Arsenault Brothers as well, and just for getting back to us with their answers on every single question that was asked last week, and the fact that you even contacted the neighbor that had a few questions and worked things out with them, and I just appreciate that, and I like that kind of business. Thank you for your application, and yeah, thank you for what you do in Summerside. Your buildings are looking beautiful. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, as the council that represents the ward, thank you so much for being so open and honest and willing to work with the residents. I know it makes a big difference as a councillor. If you're not getting calls on something, then they have the trust in the developer that you're doing what's right. And by reaching out to them, to the neighbors yourselves, it means a lot to people. So thank you very much.
Councillor Snow.
Thank you, Councillor McCreely, and yeah, just to echo fellow councillors and their comments, thank you to their developer, Arsenault Properties, for continuing to invest in Summerside. But one thing that really caught my eye during this process was how well prepared they were, the design layout, and how thoughtful that design layout was, going from 2 to 3 stories and then to 4. Like, it really makes a difference when stuff is presented in a way that you can visually see it and know what you're going to expect. So thank you for your efforts, and look forward to continuing to work with you guys to build Summerside.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
I was waiting for all of the planning board members first. Pretty well the same comments as other members of council have said, but thank you for putting in the application. Thank you for your professionalism and your attention to detail and the follow-up with the residents and neighbors that will be around you, because I think, as said, it speaks volumes and it really builds trust and goodwill to see these types of projects come forward. So thank you.
And I just have one other thing that I would like to thank the Arsenault Brothers for, is the $250,000 that you donated to the Prince County Hospital. I don't know if that was in a public forum or not, but I certainly wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? I guess I would just echo, I won't belabor the point, but echo what others have said. I'm really not surprised by the professionalism and the quality of the reports. I have an ongoing relationship with David and his company, and through other things, and I know the kind of response that they provide to people. So not surprised at all. So with that, if there's no further comments, we would call for the question. It's been moved and seconded. I can read the recommendation back into the record there just quickly. The application received from Arsenal Brothers Holding, Inc. for a portion of PID number 836353 to amend the city official plan from commercial land use to residential land use, and the city zoning bylaw from service commercial C2 zone to high-density residential R4 zone be recommended to be approved by council, and that was moved and seconded. So with that, we would call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. So that will go to council tomorrow night. Yeah. Tomorrow night, 6:30. Yeah. Okay. No. Just if there's a time. Yeah, just for clarity, the deputy mayor is voting in favor, just so that we have a unanimous, well, she's sitting in for the mayor, so yeah, she would have a vote there, so. Okay, we're clear? Okay, that's that one. The next one on the agenda is... Thanks, folks. Thanks, David. Thanks, guys. Thanks, David.
Just leave him, you know, you can pick him up later.
Thank you. See you later. We'll be chatting. Okay, we'll move on here in the interest of time. And our next subject here is 100 Industrial Crescent, restricted uses. Supporting explanation, the purpose. The purpose of the restricted use is to allow a medical office in the main building and a school premise, student/instructor residence in the proposed building on the same site. The subject property is currently zoned as light industrial M1. Background, 2 applications were received from Land and Sea Enterprise Limited for 100 Industrial Crescent, PID number 472613, to allow a medical office as a restricted use in a light industrial M1 zone and a school premise, student/instructor residence. The report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, when planning board reviews a restricted use, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. A, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment, these applications require a restricted use approval in the M1 zone in order to conform to this bylaw. The current zoning, light industrial M1, does not change. One of the purposes of the restricted use designation is to accommodate uses where zoning would result in undesirable land uses due to as of right in that zone. A medical office and a school premises are permitted in other zones. If the property were to be rezoned to one of these zones, such to accommodate the medical office or school premise, it would result in other undesirable land uses in an industrial park. The specific use of a medical office and school premise can be achieved by designating the property as a restricted use, allowing only the medical office and school premises use. Conformity with the official plan. Staff comment, the restricted use conforms to the official plan as the land use will remain as industrial. Should the medical office or school premise no longer be required, the zoning remains as light industrial M1 and can be utilized as such. Suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment, the site is serviced and is suitable for this development. The proposed school premise will be a 2-story ICF construction building, 50 meters by 9.75 meters, 165 feet by 32 feet. There are 14 residence units being proposed intended to serve as the school premise for the Atlantic Commercial Diving Center, which is located within the existing main building on site. And the sketch of the residence is included. The medical office is intended to fill a space within the main building. There are 5 units in the existing main building. 2 units are occupied by the diving center. 2 units are currently being leased as dry storage, and the 5th unit is intended for the medical office. And there's a map there showing the existing building and the proposed school premises. D, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, the existing land use surrounding this property is M1. The property to the south had an approved restricted use, 200 for a church in the M1 zone, center 200, I guess should be, for a church in the M1 zone. And
That's a typo, Councillor McFeely. That's 2010. It was approved 2010 for a church in the M1 zone.
okay, it should be 2010?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, my apologies. Okay, and the map is there. E, any comments from residents or other interested persons? A public meeting was held on June 15th, 2021. The public meeting notice was advertised in the May 29th edition of The Guardian. 12 letters were mailed to 9 property owners. Kimball Johnson, Land and Sea Enterprise, spoke, providing an overview of the proposed intent of the restricted uses. Staff comment, there are no concerns raised by the public at the meeting. F, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parkland for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the existing building has adequate water and sewer service to accommodate the medical office. A new water and sewer service to the new student/instructor residents, or any change to the water and sewer service changes required for the medical office in the existing building would be at the applicant's cost. The new water and sewer service would have to be installed, augured from new student instructor residence to Industrial Crescent. Industrial Crescent is the collector street which handles 8,000 to 9,000 vehicles per day and will accept the additional loading as a result of restricted use. Industrial Crescent has an existing storm system and an on-site system which will handle the development's additional drainage. 100 Industrial Crescent has 3-phase, 347/600 volt underground service feeding the existing building. The 3-phase overhead electrical service is available on Mill Crescent to the extension at no additional cost. I read that, okay. On Mill Crescent to extend the service to the proposed student residence. The customer receives the first 90 meters of the extension at no additional cost. After the first 90 meters of extension, the customer is responsible to cover all remaining costs. Underground services required an engineering drawing to be submitted to the Summertide Electrical for approval. Please note that pad-mounted transformers have a 6-month lead time and require a signed letter of intent before an order will be placed. G, impacts from the development of pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, the development will utilize the existing access to Industrial Crescent to serve and accommodate the restricted use. H, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, there are no compatibility issues regarding environmental, scenic, or heritage resources. I, impacts on city finances and budget. Staff comment, the development does not impact city finances or budgets. J, other matters as specified in this bylaw. Nothing there. K, other matters as considered relevant, and nothing, no staff comments there. So the recommendation, city staff support the application from Land and Sea Enterprises to allow a medical office and school premise as restricted uses. As per section 5.10B, subsection 3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. And accompanying this recommendation was a copy of an inter-office memorandum from Mike Tatuska, Economic Development, commenting on the application and raising some concerns from although he recognized the value of the initiative, concerned about the use of in the industrial park, that it wasn't light industrial. So I don't think I need to raise that into the record. It was part of the package, so all council have received that, as well as other folks, as part of the package. I think it's clear there. So if you agree, Deputy Mayor, I don't think there's a need to read that into the record. So the planning board recommendation, we'll read that and ask for a mover and a second, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. The application received from Land and Sea Enterprise Limited to allow a medical office as a restricted use in the light industrial M1 zone and a school premise, student/instructor residence as a restricted use in the light industrial M1 zone be recommended be approved by council. And we would ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. We will now open the floor for any discussion. Councillor Snow.
Just a comment on the proposal. This easily could have been not in Summerside, could have moved anywhere. As you recall, this was run at one point by Holland College. They decided to end the program. A local person picked up that program. Not only are they continuing with the program, they're building on, they're wanting to build housing for people coming here. I just see so many positives from this, so I just want to thank them for making the investment to keep this program in Summerside, because I think for many years it was sort of a really neat program that was running that sort of might have been overlooked, but it definitely adds to the community for sure, so thank them for that.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Ramsey?
Yeah, no, I would just echo what Councillor Snow said. It's nice that Mr. Johnson decided to keep this program running in Summerside, and the housing is very important because, as everybody knows, the difficulty we're having right now with housing. So I think it's a great program, and I thank him for that.
Deputy Mayor.
And also, just to echo what other members have said, the fact that they do have some goals in mind of hopefully becoming international with that type of a trade, that would be really something, so it'd be good.
Any other comments or concerns or questions? If not, don't see any lights.
I'd like to comment a couple things just before
okay.
we go too far. I guess the application has kind of evolved as it's great that, as you state, that someone's taken over the business and going to keep it here in Summerside. The debate is not really that. It's really, as the economic development has pointed out, that if the housing is the need, does the housing have to be in this industrial park? That's really what the debate is that you have to consider. And it's kind of evolved. When we first talked, it was going to be a boarding house. Then it was going to be, through the course of the presentation, we were talking 6 or 8 units, and now it's 14 units. And now when we look at the layout that got submitted, they're 2-bedroom units. So is it growing into a 14-unit apartment building that's going to be an industrial park? Those are things that, if that's what you want to do, if it's a conditional use, you might want to consider putting some restrictions on what's actually going to happen there, and that it's not going to be a 14-unit apartment building, and then the business goes somewhere else, and we're left with a $1 million building there that's going to be, and have different tenants in there, and we have different facilities that are in there that aren't going to be friendly, and that's what I think the economic development was trying to highlight to you, is to be considering that, yes, it's great to be here and grow the business, but does the housing have to be adjacent to where the office is? That's the first part. So then the other part is, if we are going to go down that road, we might want to make sure we look at the conditions. That's the first part. Second part would be that if it did go there, that it wouldn't be able to be subdivided off. It'd have to stay with that larger parcel and be with the building, so it would be a residence or offices or for that business. Those are some things that if you do go down that road. That's why it's kind of evolved as we went along between what we initially heard and what we heard at the meeting, and then actually getting more information in. So there's definitely, you want to give some merit to the thoughts on the zoning, as well as the intended uses, and the economic development talking about how much vacancy we have, and we're going to take I guess the next part of it, we're only still talking about the housing part. The other part was the business office going in there. And when we talked again, initially it was, there was a part need to have medical services available for these students. They get their training or their fitness tests or their health analysis done. There is some rationale for that to be there. But then it kind of evolved in the meeting to, the stuff that was said at the meeting was, okay, we have other people coming, labs, like, oh, we're looking at putting a medical clinic here. This is what we were thinking about, was one of the 5 bays was gonna be used. So again, if you're open to having that type of business in there, you may wanna consider putting restrictions on the restricted use and saying one of the 5 bays can be used for this purpose, and we're not gonna convert the whole building into a medical center in the middle of your industrial park. I guess those are things I think you wanna, that's what I think they were trying to highlight, some of the comments there, that yes, there's no entity now overseeing the use of the park. It's basically, it's open, let's try and find something to put in it rather than find something appropriate to go in it. It's great the business that's going in there is the appropriate thing to perhaps put in there. It's great that it's a school, but do the other things need to go with it? And do they need to happen on that property? And if you agree they happen on the property, you may want to consider narrowing up the scope of what they can be.
Thank you, Aaron. I was going to speak to some of that before we went to the vote there, but that's good. That's good. Better coming from you.
And, yeah.
Councillor Ramsey.
Yeah, and I hear exactly what Aaron's saying, but I also, I think with the school and having the housing right on the same property is economically probably way more affordable for those owners of the school. Can't get the students if they don't have housing, and, you know, so I think economically that might be the best place for them. And like you say, maybe we could put some stipulations on that, but that I think the housing for those students would be very, very important at this point. The medical needs that we have in Summerside, I think there's room for everybody in Summerside when it comes to the medical clinic that they're talking about, and whether they expand or whether they don't. Right now, we certainly need some expansion. So I would be in favor of that as well. So housing and the medical side of it. The school part is already happening there, so. Anyway, I think it's if we do have to maybe put a few stipulations, but I think it's an excellent opportunity for Summerside and some growth in both of those areas.
So that's what I sense, and I guess the question then is, if we want to put restrictions, what would those restrictions look like? And I'm not sure we have that information today to really, you know, I don't know if planning board feels comfortable making a recommendation without really understanding what those restrictions may be, and
You guys, that's what we're here for, is to discuss, do you want restrictions? What would they be like? And if we need to get the wording up to the intent of those, we'll bring it back to you, and we can have another meeting if you want to get over the wording of it. It wasn't going to tonight's, it was potentially tomorrow evening, where we had another council meeting on another agenda for that particular reason. If topics came up tonight, we didn't want to be on trying to process that at the monthly meeting. We have another day to try and come up with the wording and bring it back to us if that's what you want. Or we can put it off to another meeting and look at our agenda.
I guess I'm really trying to understand what those restrictions would
Right.
be.
Yeah.
And what,
And I was just gonna
No,
say.
I guess when we started talking about that, I was wondering why the recommendation was there to be approved by council. But I really think that this area is in need of a lift. The building needs to be, you know, I went by there the other day and the building is looking better already. The residents, along with this concept, I don't really have nothing against it, but I think we need to have restrictions. What happens if, you know, things go south in 3 years? What are we left with? You know, it's supposed to be an industrial park, but you know, I think it's a good concept, and I hope that we can move forward with it. But I think there needs to be some restrictions on it. So I guess I was just surprised that it'd be recommended and then we have all these questions, so,
I think part of the problem is it's kind of evolved, I think,
yeah.
on an ongoing basis. I think Deputy Mayor was
Okay.
first and then Councillor Snow. Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
Councillor.
no, I'm good.
Well, I think probably the key phrase is there's more information that has evolved than probably what we were totally aware of. And I guess what I'm wondering, with the medical component of it, I wonder if that would be something that we could get more information on what the plans are so that we would know that, like, they could probably work hand in hand, but I would hate to see if there was any type of, and I hate to use the word competition, with the existing medical components that are available. I think we would need to be really clear on that. If it's geared to, say, diving and, you know, the medical stuff for divers, that would certainly be more workable. But I think we need just a bit more information. It is a good project, but it would be helpful to get a bit more information so that we know what we're, if I can use the phrase, diving into.
I think it was just a wide open medical practice, and they would only occupy the 5th unit. We just want to make sure that's what you're considering, and so that we tighten it up and know exactly what we're saying on the property. He stated that a doctor as well as a nurse practitioner or whatever complement they have now would locate there, and that would only be a small component. They can't operate a facility just for the students in the 6 months, but they would be there, run their regular complement of services, but they would be there to service those students' needs. It wouldn't predominantly just be for the students. So I think what they're proposing is, yes, in one of the 5 units that's there, make it a medical office for their current complement or setup that they have, similar on McEwen Road, they stated. And so that would be one of the 5 units and not
Not all
evolve
five.
into all the rest of the units that they're gonna have. And then the other issue we have is if they end up putting the units there, is there a need for them to be 2-bedroom units in a housing? You know, like if they're coming here for 6 months, are they gonna be all just 1-bedroom things to a certain number? I think what was proposed was 14 units. If you wanted to put a cap and saying 14 1-bedroom units or whatever, that's the language we need to talk about and then come back with you with the wording.
So define it a bit more, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Councillor Snow?
Yeah, I guess I was just gonna say that before we do anything, I think those fine details need to come back, because I didn't know things evolved until you just said they evolved, which is unfortunate, because we're going through the process now. So if things are still evolving on their part, then they're not quite ready to be presenting it to council. So we need them to sort of figure out what they are asking for, so we know exactly what they're asking for, and then we can move. Housing there is not really phasing me too much, because if you go in there and you look to the right, there's
Right.
2 or 3 big apartment buildings, so
Right.
it's not totally out of the realm to have
Exactly.
some units right there, because they're currently pretty much there anyway. So I just would like to know exactly what we're dealing with, like we do with any rezoning, so.
Just
Cal-
to clarify, sorry, on the, I'll say the involvement of it. So when we had preliminary discussions with the applicant, it was 8 to 10 units, and it was explained more so like a student residence with rooms and then a common area, what have you. It was only at the public meeting that the applicant, so it wasn't like a lot of chain of events that changed it. It was just basically the preliminary discussion, and then explained to him that whatever you're asking for, you have to be specific. So that's when he came up with, okay, 14 units, and then he showed the 2-bedroom plan of the 14 units, being a 2-story building, and then also that it was Unit 5 that he was going to change to the medical office.
Councillor Ramsey?
Yeah, I think, and we can clarify this, but the 2-bedroom units for someone to build residence, like the 2 bedrooms has to be cheaper for him to do, because then he has to only do 1 kitchen, 1 living room, 2 bedrooms for 2 people. Like, I think we have to sort of realize why he's doing the 2 bedrooms, and I'd hate to discourage any developer, and so I just hope we're gentle with this developer in finding out, you know, what they want and what we can allow in this area, because I'd really like to see this happen. So anyway, that's just my
Okay,
opinion on
see any other lights. So, planning board, what's your wish here? We can defer for more information. I mean, we have a motion moved and seconded, but that's fine. We can defer the vote on that until we have more information. We have another planning board meeting scheduled for the 30th.
I guess just before we go back to the applicant, what more information do you want to know? He's saying, I want to build a 14-unit, two-bedroom unit. Here's the size of the building, and I want to make unit number 5 a medical office. That's what he's stating. We're just only suggesting that you guys, if you don't want it to grow beyond that, that you put your restrictions or your conditions on the restricted use approval. That's what he's asking for consideration. If you're not comfortable with that, say you're open to doing something else or ask.
It's pretty hard to put restrictions on any kind of medical clinic right now with the shape that we're in here in Summerside. I mean, we have a clinic where we're doing the roundabout on Central Street. We have a number of clinics, and we're not putting restrictions on them, I don't believe. So I just wonder why we're looking at putting restrictions here.
I think the reason is because it's an industrial park.
The other ones are in permitted zones.
Your worship, you had,
Yeah, sorry, I had another commitment there. I was a little bit late, but I guess Aaron just asked the question, what more information? The apartment building that he owns now has the same setup on McEwen and Mellish. It's an apartment building, and I believe his wife is a doctor, and she's a medical office in there or whatever. Would we be putting ourselves in a position where we're just holding up production here? I don't know what more information would be required. We know what he wants to build, and I think it was mentioned around here about how badly the housing is needed. But I guess I just hate to see something put off, and because things tend to get dragged on. And our construction season here is not all that long, but I'm not exactly sure of the date that he's planning on starting. But I can't see what more information we would need, because he has a good reputation of being a good builder.
I don't think anybody's against it. The issue that we're dealt with is it's in an industrial zone, and those other areas were in a residential zone, right? So I have no problem with the concept right now, but what I think we should do is if he needs to build further, we got to have some kind of restriction there that it has to come back to council to be approved.
so for planning board here, if the motion was to be changed to refer to the restrictions, that the application be restricted to 14 units, 14 two-bedroom units, and 1 unit of the existing building.
Right, and if he needed to go further, it has to come back to a council.
Yeah,
for a
what
decision,
we
yeah.
would be approving is
Yeah.
in my mind anyways, what we would be approving is the discretionary use
Right,
for 1 unit of the building
to be medical.
and a 14
Yeah.
two-bedroom unit building.
Yeah.
Anything over and above that,
Has to come back to
Would have to
council.
come back.
I don't see a problem with that.
And that's his request, isn't it, what you just said?
yeah.
I can't see any sense in putting it off, but that's just my personal opinion.
It's industrial, but we have a church out there too.
Right.
No, then there's other, yeah, no, there are some things there.
We do what the ordinary things sometimes.
CAO?
And just to follow up on planning board chair's comments, I think if there's just some general language that goes back to the developer that says that anything other than the purposes for which this is intended has to come back to council for approval. Something along those lines. I mean, we can work on the wording, but something like that.
So, just to read, with the permission then of the mover and seconder, the recommendation then would read, the applications received from Land and Sea Enterprises Limited be allowed to allow a medical office as a restricted use in the light industrial M1 zone, and a school premise, student/instructor residence as a restricted use in the light industrial M1 zone be recommended to be approved by council. The restricted the restrictions on the use include a 14-unit apartment, 2-bedroom apartment building, and one unit of the existing building.
Sounds
So the
good.
mover and seconder would agree with that? Okay, we all understand the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. So staff will,
Handle it.
this will go to council tomorrow night, and we redo the motion so that it makes a little more sense for council at that time. Thank you. Okay, and moving on quickly then to our final piece of business on planning board is a mobile sales establishment application from Craig O'Neill. Supporting explanation, the purpose of the application is to allow mobile sales establishment Locavor to operate at Heather Moist Drive, Harbor Quay site from June to October, weather permitting. The proposed hours of operation are 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday. Background, this will be Craig O'Neill's first time operating in the city. The location being proposed is owned by the Summerside Port Corporation, Inc., and the lands are defined in the diagram there. Mobile sales establishment means a business located in a motorized vehicle or movable structure that is towed or moved by a motorized vehicle, or where all goods, wares, or foodstuff that are offered for sale are contained entirely within the motorized vehicle or movable structure, but does not include the lunch truck. The report under Section 13, City of Summerside Licensing Bylaw CS-21, the bylaw states the following. Item number 13, the mobile sales establishment license. A, any person or company seeking a license to operate a mobile sales establishment in the city shall make application therefore to the council. B, licenses may be granted for a mobile sales establishment to conduct business on a maximum of 2 locations in the city, and each application shall be accompanied by a letter of permission from the owners of the property on which the mobile sales establishment will be located. C, council shall allow or refuse an application based upon considerations of safety, desirability, impact on established businesses in the city, public convenience, and such other considerations as it deems appropriate. D, council may attach terms and conditions to the approval of the license if granted, including but not limited to 1, hours of and day of operations, 2, health code requirements, 3, litter control, 4, approved locations. E, the license for a mobile sales establishment shall be valid for the calendar year in which the application is made. A new application is required to council for each calendar year. F, no appeal shall lie from a decision of council respecting a mobile sales establishment license. Staff comment. 1, the applicant has provided written permission from the Summerside Port Corporation, Inc. Staff review. City staff support the application received from Craig O'Neill to operate a mobile sales establishment, Locavor, at 245 Heather Moist Drive, property owned by Summerside Port Corporation. As per Section 5.10, subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Craig O'Neill to operate a mobile sales establishment, Locavor, at 245 Heather Moist Drive, property owned by Summerside Port Authority, Inc., be recommended to be approved by council, and we would ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. Any questions? Comments? We're good?
I'm not a real, I'm just curious, so, the owner's not here. What questions would we have? Like, he seems to meet all their requirements, and we talked about this, like, going through this process, we seem to be just rubber stamping them. I don't know what we would say to say, you can, like, we don't,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a little bit confused by this process and how we get from
The
here to there and get
process,
through.
yeah, we've raised this on several occasions, and I think we've asked the Policy Review Committee to take a look at this whole mobile license, particularly the renewals.
Right.
To me, there's no need for a renewal if they're in good standing to come to council. that staff should be authorized to make those happen. So anyways, Aaron?
And if this was the 10th one in that location, you'd probably say, are we getting too many down there? Are there gonna be cars everywhere? What with sanitation? Is there washrooms? But, yes, it's a new thing. The plan was to, committee to review, and we've done our part a year and a half ago to eliminate this portion coming back to us.
Yeah.
It would still come back if it was somebody new, so you had a first chance to say, does anyone know of this person, any issues? And where are they going? If they change locations, if you wanted to consider where they were, and now if you got massing, is it getting too big or too small, and do they have the services there to accommodate it?
Yeah, I guess my point is, part of me wishes he was here tonight in case I don't really have a question, I don't know what I would feel like asking, but at least if he was here, then if you had a question, you could ask him, right? Like,
Or we would just defer it, get his
is it just an
answers.
old
We would just
wagon
defer
he's
it.
hauling in there that
Yeah.
it's gonna be, all gonna be like, what is that? Do you know what I mean? Like, so is there gonna be issues that we're not thinking of at this point without having him here to ask the questions? But, yeah, I just sort of want to get that off my chest.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we will call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried, so the recommendation will go to council. And that concludes the agenda for planning board, and I guess we don't need to be that formal, we'll just call the meeting adjourned.
So we're